Part 25. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, Past and Present. Chapter 241. Chapter 241 Spring Festival. Su Changqing tightened his wrists, and every word in Heli's book fell into his eyes and turned into huge mountains one after another, pressing down on him. For a long time, Su Changqing started writing. Handwriting that was once praised by others for its good handwriting turned out to be crooked and ugly on paper, making it extremely ugly. Su Changqing handed the signed He Li Shu through the gap, but couldn't help but shrink his hand. "Master Wang, I signed this He Li Shu, when can I leave?" "Master Su, I'm afraid he will be detained in prison for a few more days." Wang Ziyi returned and took the He Li Shu out of Su Changqing's fingers. He and Li Shu were sent to the Sun family. At this time, there are only 3 days left until spring. Although the Su family's affairs have caused some turmoil, they don't seem to be that important before spring. Sell. Su Yuqing and Wen Yao were locked up together, and Su Changzhong was next door. "Mom, when can we go out?" Su Changzhong leaned against the wall and asked Wen Yao. Wen Yao did not forget what happened in Chunwei, and saw that the guards in front of the cell door had changed their shifts again. It was the little brother she had bribed before. "Brother," Wen Yao pulled the wooden fence, "do you know the current situation of Mr. Su?" They were not locked up with Su Changqing, and they didn't even know anything about the outside world. Wen Yao was not worried about Su Changqing. The only worry was that if Su Changzhong missed this spring, the next one would have to wait until 3 years later. The jailer looked embarrassed. "Madam, it's not that I don't want to help you, it's just that I don't know about Suho's matter." "Brother, please kindly help me," Wen Yao said, looked at Su Yuqing, and took a few steps forward. "Mother." Su Yuqing wanted to avoid Wen Yao, but the things in her arms were still taken out. It was the purse she took out specially when she was kicked out of the Su family. There are still a few ingots of silver in it. Wen Yao took out a tablet and handed it to the jailer. With such a sum of money, the jailer would naturally not refuse it. But just when he was about to take it over, the ingot of silver was suddenly taken back. The jailer thought he had been thrown away. He raised his eyes and was about to speak, but stopped. He slowly turned around, and it was Hong Yong who was walking not far away. The jailer took a breath of cold air and quickly stood up. "Grown-ups." Hong Yong noticed the scene early and said in a deep voice, "Go and receive the punishment yourself." The jailer didn't dare to explain, "Yes." Hunting his shoulders, he walked away quickly. "Wen Yao, a person from Chuzhu." Hong Yong looked at Wen Yao in the cell and asked. Wen Yao was stunned for a moment, then subconsciously opened her mouth. Exactly. If Hong Yong hadn't mentioned it, she would have almost forgotten it. The other party's reaction was a bit strange, and Hong Yong saw it in his eyes. "Your identity has been verified. You are not the queen of the Wen family. It's just the matter between you and Mr. Su. We still need to investigate. I can only ask the 3 of you to stay in the cell longer. It's day." "Grown-ups." Seeing that Hong Yong was about to leave, Wen Yao quickly called him to stop him. Hong Yong turned around and asked, "What else is there?" "Please help me, sir. The son of a peasant woman wants to attend the spring festival, but he is in prison now. What should I do?" Wen Yao bit her lower lip and looked at Hong Yong sincerely. Hong Yong is not a person who is easily seduced by beauty. Seeing Wen Yao's attitude, he felt even more unhappy. "But the face is still dull. This matter is beyond my control." After saying that, Hong Yong ignored him and turned around to leave. There was a hint of sinisterness in Wen Yao's eyes. She turned around and saw Su Yuqing still staring at the purse in her hand. She became even more angry and said, "You can't let go of money like this. Is this how I usually teach you?" "Mother." Su Yuqing muttered, "You didn't give me the money. Didn't it all go into my brother's pocket?" Had she not been frugal, how could she have saved all this money? When Wenyu heard this, she became even more angry, but at least she remembered that this was a prison cell, so she twisted Suyuking's arm to the corner and said, "When you get out, I will replenish the money for you. You must remember that, mother." Suyuking's eyes lit up. Looking at it this way, the mother and daughter didn't seem to be worried at all about not being able to get out. Especially Suyuking, when she was put into prison at first, she still cried out that she was scared, but was quickly persuaded by Wenyu and calmed down. As for Suchongzhong, he always had no brains. Seeing that his mother and sister were both calm, he also calmed down. Such a strange situation was naturally told to Wang Xiuyi and Hongyang by the jailer. "This Wenyu is really weird. When I asked her today, she didn't seem to know that she was from Chuzhu." Hongyang told Wang Xiuyi his doubts. "I had people check it over and over again and found no problems." Wang Xiuyi shook his head. He also felt that something was wrong. Compared with the information found in Chuzhu, he naturally believed more in the evidence sent by the Sun family, not to mention the household registration. The registration was already 20 years ago, so there may be some discrepancies. Hongyang asked again, "The emperor has no doubts?" The meaning of Emperor Jianwen made Wang Xiuyi feel even more strange. "Your Majesty does not intend to severely punish Suho." Although in recent years, Emperor Jianwen's methods have become less harsh than in the past and have gradually become gentler, such small punishments and large warnings really make people feel that Emperor Jianwen is particularly biased towards the Su family. Is it possible that it is just to check and balance the Sun family? On the day of the imperial examination, the examination room was set up in Gongyuan, and nearly 1,000 people took part in the examination. The scene was very spectacular. "Oh, Dad, we are already at the door. Just let go. Your son will definitely not run away." Gu Yuanbei was dragged to Gongyuan by his father, who twisted his arm. Among so many candidates, he was the only one who was the most reluctant to come. "Brother Gu." Suleun was chatting with Luchin and Qinqiu when he saw Gu Yuanbei and raised his hand to say hello. Without caring about anything else, Gu Yuanbei only had time to wave to Suleun before he was thrown into the examination room by his father. Because of Gu Yuanbei, Gu's father did not participate in all the arrangements for this spring. "Uncle Gu." Father Gu's face softened, "You must be Leun. This brat told me about you. You really look like your mother. Brother Gu is also very similar to you, Uncle Gu." After all, there was a difference in seniority. After the two exchanged a few words, Gu's father left. "Here, the exam is about to start." Suleun didn't stay long. The reason why he came today was because Qinqiu was worried that someone would cause trouble for Zhou Mingsheng, so he asked her specifically. She was fine, so she came with the soldiers. The people who kidnapped Qinqiu and Zhou Mingsheng were released after being imprisoned for a few days. Naturally, they were no longer qualified to take the exam. As for Liu He, Luchin walked beside Suleun and said in a heavy tone, "My mother was crying at home all day long, saying that I was the one who harmed Liu He." End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 242. Chapter 242. Ching Ching is kidnapped. Although Liu He was not directly involved in the kidnapping, he was also implicated. "I also accidentally caught a cold and am still lying in bed recuperating. I don't know if it's bad luck or retribution." When Suleun first learned about this, he was also surprised. If there is no cold, Liu He can still participate in the spring festival. Although he may not necessarily get a good ranking, there should be no problem in passing the exam. "It's just an accident, what does it have to do with you?" Suleun comforted him. From her previous contacts with Lu Mu, she had already seen that the other party was partial to Liu He, but she did not expect that it would become this partial. Lucien sighed lightly, but didn't say any more. The two of them parted at a fork in the road. Sulayun walked towards Sun Mansion, with Kuilu and Lian Xian following behind. There were many people coming and going around, and the air was filled with the fragrance of pastries. Suddenly, Sulayun stopped and looked somewhere, where a strong man was walking through the crowd carrying a sack. "Miss, what's the problem?" Lian Xian also looked over and asked. Sulayun frowned slightly. When the man walked by just now, she seemed to smell a familiar smell. Just for a moment, my head was a little empty and I couldn't remember anything. "Kuilu, follow me and take a look, be careful." "Yes, miss." Kuilu nodded and followed quickly. An hour later, Kuilu returned to Sun Mansion. "Miss, I have lost my servant." Kuilu looked annoyed and a bit depressed. Sulayun blinked. Although Kuilu's strength was not as good as Lu Feng's, it was still pretty good. He was able to throw Kuilu away. It seemed that the other party was quite capable. "Did you find anything?" "This slave was thrown away before I noticed anything." Kuilu lowered her head. "Please punish me, miss." "What should I punish you for? Maybe it's just that I'm too worried, and it's not a big deal." Sulayun said this, but felt a little weird in his heart. That scent is really familiar. As if it was on her lips, she could blurt it out in the next second. Sulayun didn't even think about it until he fell asleep. The next day, after breakfast, the housekeeper Lao Yang took a middle-aged man into Keahuaziazu. This courtyard is completely decorated according to the style of the Su Mansion. The plaque on the courtyard door was rewritten by Sun Gro and had it made. Hence, it is also called Keahuaziazu. "Little miss, this is Su Hua. He has been working in Sun Mansion's shop before. You can just leave it to him to handle the affairs of the bookstore in the future." Ever since Lin Wenbin was arrested by the government, the bookstore has been closed. Since he didn't want the shop to remain idle, Sulayun planned to reopen it. The first step is to find a new shopkeeper. Su Hua has met the young lady. Su Hua looks like a fool, but he is not very tall. Su Hua was a prominent official during the Jianan period, so he should have no problem managing the bookstore. Lao Yang added. Su Hua scratched his head, his cheeks slightly red. "I just studied for a few years, and I was lucky enough to pass the exam. That bookstore will trouble you in the future." At first glance, Sulayun felt that Su Hua was pretty good. But what kind of temperament exactly needs to be looked at more? Miss Lu is here." Just as Lao Yang took Su Hua out, someone else came to Keahuaziazu. Lu Qin hurried into the courtyard, her face still a bit pale, and she was panting, as if she had run over. "Li Yun, have you heard? Ching Ching was kidnapped yesterday. Mrs. Lin's daughter." Sulayun stood up suddenly. At this moment, the blank space in his head finally disappeared. That scent was clearly the sachet she gave to Lin Qianqian earlier. She actually forgot. "I also heard what my servant said when I went to Lin Mansion early in the morning." Seeing Sulayun walking out, Lu Qin didn't bother to rest and hurriedly followed him. "Master Lin has already sent someone to look for him, but you also know that there will be a trial in the next few days. There are many more people in the capital. It's hard to find him. I'm afraid it will take a lot of effort." "Why tie up Ching Ching?" Sulayun asked with a solemn expression. Kuilu acted quickly and had already run to prepare the carriage at Lian Xian's instructions. When a few people arrived at the door, the carriage also arrived. Getting on the carriage, Sulayun told the driver, "Get to Lin Mansion as soon as possible." The driver followed the instructions and arrived at Lin's mansion in a short time. Sulayun and Lu Qin entered the house and walked to Mrs. Lin's yard. As soon as I reached the door, I heard shouting from the yard. "Madam! Go and call the doctor quickly." Sulayun and Lu Qin looked at each other and entered the courtyard. The servants coming and going looked anxious. Mrs. Lin closed her eyes and looked pale as she was supported by the maids. Sulayun quickly stepped forward and felt Mrs. Lin's pulse. It is a disease in which qi and blood attack the heart due to stimulation. She took out a pill from the brocade bag and was about to put it into Mrs. Lin's mouth. Ms. Su, what are you doing? Mrs. Lin's personal maid Pinger saw Sulayun's movements and quickly reached out to stop her. Miss Su, Miss Lu, you go back first. I'm afraid I won't be able to greet you today. It will be better for Mrs. Lin after taking this medicine. Miss Su, please don't embarrass me here. I know you mean well, but how can you take this medicine indiscriminately? After Pinger said this, she looked at several maids and said, hurry up and help madam in. Looking at the somewhat chaotic situation, Sulayun thought for a moment and put away the pills. Fortunately, the doctor arrived soon. Madam, the blood is so strong that it will take a while to wake up. Doctor, how long will it take? Pinger asked further. The doctor shook his head, it's hard to say. I've asked my wife to take the medicine. It can take as little as half an hour or as long as half a day. It depends on my condition. What should we do? Pinger pursed her lips tightly. Have you informed the master? Sister Pinger, Xiao Shun has run away. Mrs. Lin was unconscious, and Mr. Lin was still looking for the lady outside. For a while, the yard felt a bit leaderless. Sulayun looked at the situation inside the room, and Pinger's reaction was a little strange. Seems to be very anxious to wake up Mrs. Lin. Miss, I heard from the maid in the yard that Mrs. Lin fainted after receiving a letter from the kidnapper. Letter from the kidnapper. Sulayun's eyes swept across the room, but did not find the letter in Lian Xian's mouth. She looked at Pinger and could vaguely see something in Pinger's hand. Miss Pinger, what did the kidnapper write? Hearing Sulayun's words, Pinger trembled and said anxiously, Miss Su, why haven't you left yet? Miss Pinger, if you have any problems in this situation, you can tell me. Sulayun stared at Pinger and answered word by word. Pinger clenched the letter in her hand tightly, and after a while, she slowly stretched out her hand. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 243. Chapter 243 There is a way. The paper was crumpled and wrinkled, and it was filled with blood-red words. Sulayun took the paper and smelled it. It was not blood, but cinnabar. Those who want to write this letter know very well that using such a color can stimulate Mrs. Lin even more. The font is neat and the writing style is rough but elegant, as if it was written by a man. This paper says that each lady is required to bring 1,000 taels of silver to exchange for the lady, otherwise, they will attack the lady. At the end of the sentence, Pinger couldn't help but cover her mouth to stifle her sobs. Such harsh words made Mrs. Lin, who was already in a trance, lose her mind instantly. Sulayun looked at each word, his expression becoming more and more condensed. Where is Mr. Lin now? The master and his men are looking for the young lady outside. I have sent someone to deliver the message, but I don't know how long it will take, and... Pinger stared at the paper in her hand. What this paper says will be of no use even if the master comes back. That's the truth. Sulayun put the paper aside, took out the pills that had not been given to Mrs. Lin before, and put them into Mrs. Lin's mouth. This time, Pinger didn't have time to stop her. When she saw it, she couldn't help but screamed, Miss Su, didn't you say that? How can you take medicine indiscriminately? Doctor, please take a look quickly. Just as the doctor was about to reach out and feel the pulse, he saw Mrs. Lin's eyelids moving slightly and she slowly opened her eyes. My complexion has also improved a lot. This medicine is effective. The doctor put his hand on her, and her pulse was no longer blocked and became unobstructed. This medicine is so effective. Although acupuncture can also improve the pulse condition, it is really difficult to do it quickly like this. The doctor removed his hand and said, "Madam is fine." As he spoke, his eyes drifted towards Sulayun from time to time. Pinger stepped forward and asked, "Madam, how do you feel?" Ching Ching, Mrs. Lin's somewhat dull eyes suddenly sobered up after seeing Pinger. "I'm going to save Ching Ching." "Mrs. Lin, please calm down first." Pinger almost couldn't hold down Mrs. Lin, and a figure fell beside her. Sulayun helped restrain Mrs. Lin and said softly, "Mrs. Lin, if you go like this, not only may you not be able to save Ching Ching, but you may also get into trouble yourself. It's my fault." Mrs. Lin choked up with tears in the corners of her eyes. "If I hadn't taken Ching Ching out yesterday, she wouldn't have been taken away." Sulayun gently stroked Mrs. Lin's back. "Mrs. Lin, don't worry, Ching Ching will be fine. The most important thing now is that you also need to calm down. Ching Ching is still waiting for you." After saying that, Sulayun winked at Pinger, who reacted and quickly poured a glass of water for Mrs. Lin to drink. After taking the warm water, Mrs. Lin's mood calmed down a lot. "The first thing we need to do now is to raise money. Mrs. Lin, can you get 1,000 taels of silver from your house?" Sulayun's unhurried expression infected Mrs. Lin, and she wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. "Pinger, take someone to the warehouse to do an inventory." "Yes." Pinger responded and quickly led the people out of the yard to the warehouse. A maid came forward to straighten Mrs. Lin's clothes. Mrs. Lin hooked her hair behind her ears and said in an anxious tone, "Leun, what should I do next? There is no place for the transaction written on this paper. I think the other party will send news again." Sulayun was thoughtful, and then looked at Quilayu. "Quilayu, you meet Sun Wen and go take a look at the surrounding situation. If there is any movement, don't alert others, report it first." Quilayu nodded heavily, turned around and went out. "Will they really come again?" Mrs. Lin twisted the handkerchief in her hand. Her calm mood became uneasy again because of Sulayun's words. "When they come again, what else will they bring?" She didn't dare to think about it. Just thinking about her daughter in their hands made her feel a little out of breath. "Madam." The sound of dull footsteps came. It was Shangshu Lin who was back. Seeing her husband, Mrs. Lin immediately greeted her, as if she had someone to rely on. "Sir, those people said they wanted money to redeem Ching Ching." Lin Shangshu was more calm than Mrs. Lin. He supported his wife and said in a deep voice, "Madam, don't worry, no matter how much money you spend, I will bring Ching Ching back." "No, sir." Mrs. Lin couldn't help biting her lower lip when she heard what Lin Shangshu said, her voice trembling. "They want me to go alone." "Let you go, how can this be done?" When Lin Shangshu heard this, he naturally refused. His daughter has already had an accident, and there is no way he can let his wife get into another accident. Those people dare to arrest the minister's children under the capital, who knows what they will do. Lin Shangshu is the one who disagrees with 10,000 people. "Master, we can't let anything happen to Ching Ching." Although Mrs. Lin is also afraid, her worry about her daughter far outweighs her fear. She is naturally willing to do it for her daughter. While the two were still convincing each other, Pinger came back. "Sir, madam, there is exactly 1,000 taels of silver in the warehouse, and I have asked people to put it in the box." "Okay, Pinger, please take good care of my wife. I will personally take the money to pick up Ching Ching." "Master, just think about Ching Ching and let me go." Mrs. Lin said. Her eyes were red and she couldn't stop crying. Lin Shangshu didn't feel distressed after seeing this, but how could he dare to let his wife take risks? "Madam, you can just wait for the news at home." "Miss." Quilayu jumped into the house, holding a piece of paper in her hand. Sulayun took the note and handed it to Mrs. Lin. When I opened it, I saw that the transaction location was written inside, which was a dilapidated temple in the suburbs. This is King King's handkerchief. Mrs. Lin's eyes fell under the note, which was covered with a handkerchief. The handkerchief was sewn by Mrs. Lin herself, so she could recognize it at a glance. There are still some blood stains on it, and it looks very fresh. Master, is this their warning? Mrs. Lin's hand holding the handkerchief couldn't stop shaking. No, master, I have to go. Lin Shangshu also hesitated, and after weighing it, he said, Madam, let's go together. I have a solution. Sulayun suddenly spoke. It takes about 1 stick of incense to get from the city to the outside. The carriage stopped not far from its destination. The driver jumped out of the carriage and said into the carriage, Madam, we have arrived. Then, the coachman turned and left. After waiting for a while, a hand stretched out and slowly pushed the car curtain open. Mrs. Lin stepped out of the carriage wearing a veil. The temple was not far away. She took a deep breath, her eyes flashed slightly, and she walked forward. Just as he was approaching the entrance of the temple, a voice sounded. Mrs. Lin. Who? Mrs. Lin was startled and looked around in a panic, but there was no one there. But the sound sounded as if it was coming from the ear. Mrs. Lin tightened her sleeves and took a step forward. I have brought the money, where is Ching Ching? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 244. Chapter 244 The Maze on the Ground. There was silence all around. It was as if the sound just now had never happened. Sulayun, who was dressed as Mrs. Lin, blinked and looked around with his peripheral vision. That sound must have been made by someone nearby. Sulayun hesitated for a moment, then stepped into the dilapidated temple. The ground was strewn with straw. Sulayun noticed that the straw in several places was covered with footprints. Where is the money? The sound sounded again, followed by the smell of something rotten. Sulayun quietly changed the direction, which was exactly where the smell came from. She stepped forward and said, on the carriage outside, you should be able to see a total of 1,000 taels of silver, not a penny less. Go and bring it in. Sulayun paused. How can I move it alone? No respond. The other party seemed determined to let her move the money. Sulayun changed direction and left the temple. He walked towards the carriage step by step. She sighed and opened the curtain, revealing the box of silver inside. The weight of this box of silver is almost the same as hers. After thinking about it, Sulayun opened the box and took out the silver one by one. After the weight of the box was enough for her to lift it, she pulled the box off the carriage. Fortunately, it was not far from the temple. Sulayun first pulled the box and the silver inside into the temple. The remaining silver was transported in again and again. Finally, reinstall the silver. 1,000 taels of silver is not much for the Lin family. Sulayun frowned. She always felt that the other party's asking price was a bit low. Lin Qingqing was in the capital for 1,000 taels of silver? She was thinking in her mind, closed the box with her hands, and breathed lightly, I have already brought in all the silver. Now, please, Mrs. Lin, please take a rest. As soon as the voice sounded, Sulayun's expression changed and his head became a little heavy. There was no peculiar smell in the air, but she was still infected. The moment she fell, Sulayun bit the tip of her tongue, and the pain kept her awake for a moment. At this dose, the sachet on her body has no effect. Having just pinched the detoxification pill, there was no time left. Sulayun fell into a coma. Mother, mother. The voice in her ear woke her up. Sulayun had a splitting headache. He opened his eyelids and found that the surroundings were a little dark. Ahem. The dryness in her throat made her cough. "Mother!" Lin Qingqing shouted happily when she saw her waking up. Sulayun raised his eyes and saw Lin Qingqing, who was safe and sound. "Qingqing." "Mother." Lin Qingqing's hair was messy, but fortunately she was neatly dressed and didn't look injured. Just seeing Sulayun looking like Mrs. Lin now, Lin Qingqing couldn't help but sob, "Mom, Qingqing is scared." "It's okay, Qingqing, mother is here." Sulayun held Lin Qingqing in his arms and comforted her softly. She looked around, surrounded by walls. Only the wall near them had a luminous pearl set in it, illuminating the edges. "Mother, where are we?" Lin Qingqing asked with sobs. Sulayun shook his head. "Qingqing, have you been locked up here all this time?" "No," Lin Qingqing rubbed her eyes, "I woke up after a nap and I'm here." "Mother, you lie next to me." Sulayun stood up and took Lin Qingqing to look around. "Looks like a basement. It's just that there is a luminous pearl installed in the basement. It's a bit strange no matter how you think about it." Sulayun tentatively went to get the luminous pearl, but he couldn't get it out. Lin Qingqing followed Sulayun obediently, watching her groping from wall to wall. The tip of his toe seemed to touch something. Sulayun squatted down and pulled away the straw on the ground. "Expose a slightly raised stone block." Unable to take it out, Sulayun pressed it down tentatively, but there was no response. But soon, she noticed the situation. There are sunken lines on the uncovered ground. "Qingqing, help me!" Sulayun shouted, but received no response. She quickly looked back and saw Lin Qingqing standing not far away, shrinking. "Qingqing, what's wrong? You are not my mother." Sulayun was previously worried that someone was still hiding in the dark, so Sulayun did not disclose his identity. Now that Lin Qingqing found out, he quickly explained, "Qingqing, it's me. Do you remember who gave you the sachet?" Lin Qingqing stared at Sulayun for a while and asked, "Sister Layun." "It's me, but I can't take off this face now. If you don't believe it." Sulayun thought for a while, then reached out and took out the sachet from his arms. "Take a look." Lin Qingqing stepped forward hesitantly, took the sachet from Sulayun's hand, looked at it carefully for a while, and suddenly pursed her lips, "Sister Layun. It's me." Sulayun felt a little annoyed knowing that he might have scared Lin Qingqing again just now. Fortunately, after her identity was confirmed, Lin Qingqing was not as scared as before, and helped Sulayun clean up the straw on the ground. Soon, the straw on the ground was piled to the edge. The entire ground is covered with concave lines. The shape looks very similar to a chessboard, but it has many more lines than a chessboard. And there are no chess pieces here. Sulayun looked at the only different bulge and fell into deep thought. "Sister Layun, look here." Lin Qingqing seemed to have discovered something and waved. Sulayun stepped forward quickly. Lin Qingqing was in a corner where the light could not reach. Vaguely, it seems that you can see a few lines of words carved on the wall. Without light, it is really difficult to see clearly. Sulayun reached out to touch it, but the characters were very small and he couldn't figure out what they were. "Is there any way to remove the words?" Suddenly, Sulayun took out the kid from her arms. She remembered that she had made a cinnabar pill before, which could be melted by adding a little water. There was naturally no water here, so Sulayun had no choice but to drink some saliva and dizzy it. Then he rubbed it against the wall. Cover it with a handkerchief and press out the color on it. It was successful. Just because the characters are small, some characters are blurred together and it is quite difficult to distinguish them. Sulayun and Lin Qingqing identified them one by one, and finally recognized all 4 lines of characters. The lines on the ground are exactly like maze paths starting from the raised stones. Once you get out of the maze, you can open the door here and leave here. After a lot of work, I finally got some good news. Sulayun turned around to look at the maze on the ground. There were too many twists and turns. But as long as there is a way to get out of here, that's a good thing. Sulayun exhaled and looked at Lin Ching Ching. Ching Ching, if you feel uncomfortable, you must tell me. Sister Leun, I'm fine, don't worry about me. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 245. Chapter 245 Meeting the Master. To reassure himself, Sulayun checked carefully. Fortunately, Lin Ching Ching was a little weak just because she hadn't eaten for a day, and there was nothing else wrong. After putting it down, Sulayun looked at the maze on the ground. The protruding stone can be walked on the lines. I think that as long as the stone is pushed out of the maze, it will be considered a success. The first thing to do is to find the exit of the maze. One big and one small lay on the ground, carefully checking the maze, and finally found the exit. Is a depression of the same size. It seems to be a place where stones are placed. The maze is not difficult, but Sulayun doesn't know if those who kidnapped Lin Ching Ching are still around, or if there are other dangers in the basement, so he is a little anxious. This urgency only delayed the time even more. The stone is once again blocked by a dead end. Sulayun had a little sweat on his forehead and his breathing became rapid. Sister Leun, don't worry. When Lin Ching Ching saw Sulayun like this, she stretched out her hand in a panic and awkwardly wiped Sulayun's sweat. Facing King King's worried and frightened eyes, Sulayun suddenly raised his hand and hid himself. Sister Leun. I'm sorry, Ching Ching, I'm in a hurry, let's take our time. She is not the only one in the basement now, there is also Ching Ching. What will Ching Ching do if she loses her sense of proportion? Sulayun took a deep breath, exhaled it slowly, repeated it several times, and finally relaxed himself. Lin Ching Ching was also helping to look at the line. I don't know how long it took, maybe it was a cup of tea, or a stick of incense, and with a dull click sound, the stone was embedded in the depression. Sister Leun, we succeeded. For children, walking through a maze like this is quite novel. Lin King's eyes were bright and she was very happy. Sulayun breathed a sigh of relief and heard the roar again. He quickly pulled Lin Ching Ching to his side to protect her. Under the gaze of the two people, a square opening was opened. Looking at the size, it is only big enough for one adult to enter at a time. Sulayun originally wanted to explore the path first, but he got in and looked for a while, but he couldn't see the end. Ching Ching, you must hold on to me and never let me go. I know. Sulayun bent down and got in again. Lin Ching Ching also grabbed her sleeve and followed closely behind. Having probably advanced for a certain distance, a click sound came from behind. That opening is closed. It was pitch black in the tunnel. Leun, sister. It turned dark in an instant, and Lin Ching Ching leaned forward in panic. Sulayun took her hand and comforted her, don't be afraid, Ching Ching, my sister is by your side. It was also dark before his eyes. Sulayun blinked and adjusted a little, then said, Ching Ching, let's keep going. If anything happens, just call me, you know. Lin Ching Ching did not dare to let go, and followed Sulayun, crawling forward step by step. At the place where Sulayun and Lin Ching Ching had just been, there was a hole in the top. Miss Quilio looked inside, but saw nothing. Sun Wen went down and took a look, and saw only the maze carved on the ground, and nothing else. But the handkerchief left in the corner was picked up by Sun Wen. Miss, I was sure she was here just now, how come she's missing now? Perhaps there is another exit here. Lian Xian guessed. Mrs. Lin's eyes were red and she looked at Lin Shangju, will Ching Ching be with Leun? They will be fine, right? Don't worry, ma'am. I've already asked people to search the surrounding areas. If anything is found, I will report it immediately. Lin Shangshu hugged his wife and comforted her softly. The color on the handkerchief is still there, but it has been completely blurred and the things on it can't be seen clearly. Sun Wendao, I'll go down and have a look. At this time, in the tunnel, there was light gradually in front of his eyes, and Sulayun breathed a sigh of relief. Ching Ching, can you still walk? Sister Leun, I can do it. Lin Qingqing's voice was already a bit weak, and Sulayun had no choice but to lead her forward. Fortunately, it's finally come to an end. Sulayun got out and quickly pulled Lin Qingqing out. This is when I have time to look at what's going on behind me. The surroundings are decorated with large, round luminous pearls, illuminating the entire space. There are a few steps not far away, and there is a sarcophagus placed on them. Sulayun covered Lin Qingqing's eyes, worried that she would be scared if she saw it. The surroundings were empty, and there was a chill in the air, making people afraid to stay longer. Sulayun looked around and finally found a stone step leading upward. Go up the steps and you will see a cave entrance. She protected Lin Qingqing as she walked up, and emerged from the hole, in a rockery. When she came out of the rockery, she was stunned. Sister Leun, what's wrong with you? Noticing Sulayun's stopped movements, Lin Qingqing asked. Lin Qingqing looked around and muttered, I don't know where we are. Lanjiao Temple. Sulayun sighed softly. These three words were spoken so softly that Lin Qingqing did not hear them clearly. To Sulayun, everything in Lanjiao Temple was so familiar that she recognized it at a glance. She had looked at this rockery for many times, but she did not expect that there was another mystery under the rockery. Beside the rockery, there is also a pool of water. When she first came to Lanjiao Temple, she was by the pool and thought about it. It was at that time that she met Master Wang Chen. Who is here? A cold but familiar voice came. Sulayun's heart moved. It was Master's voice. She pulled Lin Qingqing out of the rockery quickly and raised her eyes to meet a pair of beautiful eyes. Is she a nun? Lin Qingqing muttered, is this Lanjiao Temple? The most famous temples in the capital are Tianbao Temple and Lanjiao Temple. Mrs. Lin often took her to Lanjiao Temple. Who are you? When Master Wang Chen saw the two of them, his face softened slightly, but the next moment he noticed the fallen leaves on Sulayun's body, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. Sulayun pursed his lips, not knowing where to start. Which hole did you come out of? As Master Wang Chen spoke, he took a few steps closer to the two of them. Sulayun has been with Master Wang Chen for half a year, and they have a master-disciple relationship. He can tell at a glance what Master Wang Chen wants to do. She hurriedly pulled Lin Qingqing behind her. Master Wang Chen, we didn't mean to do it. It's just that the two of us were originally trapped in a basement, and we came out of here by chance. You know me. Master Wang Chen was slightly startled when she heard Sulayun call her. She never appeared in front of outsiders. Even the people in Lanjiao Temple, few people had met or spoken to her. She has clearly never seen the girl in front of her, but how does the other party know that her name is Wang Chen? End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 246. Chapter 246. Do you recognize it? Sulayun looked annoyed. She was so anxious that she forgot about it. It's just that the master's movements just now were clearly the movements she had taught her when taking out the needle. If she had been a step later, I was afraid that the silver needle that master had on hand would have penetrated into her and Qingqing's bodies. Wang Chen moved his wrist slightly, and the silver needle between his fingers disappeared. Sulayun didn't know how to explain it for a moment. The matter of rebirth was so divine, so how could she say it? Wang Chen saw her embarrassment and felt puzzled. She could have dealt with the two of them directly, but for some reason, she hesitated when the other party called her that. Under the rockery. We just want to leave, we don't mean to pry. Suleun said. Lin Qingqing also noticed the strangeness and huddled behind Suleun obediently. What are your names? Wang Chen asked. Suleun only thought for a moment and said, My name is Suleun, and my maternal ancestor is Sun Xiao. She is the daughter of the minister of Hubu, and her surname is Lin. Sun Xiao. Wang Chen thought of something. Su Weiner is your sister? Yes and no. Then let's go, but if you want to survive, don't tell anyone what you saw. Wang Chen waved his sleeves and turned his back to the two of them. Seeing this, Suleun didn't care much and left quickly with Lin Qingqing. It wasn't until she had walked quite a distance that her heart dropped. Sister Leun, does that nun want to kill us? Although Lin Qingqing is young, she is very smart and can see the clues. Suleun thought for a while, then knelt down and looked at Lin Qingqing. Qingqing, can you keep the secret for us? Sister Leun, don't be afraid. I asked my father to protect you and nothing will happen to you. Lin Qingqing pouted and thought for a while, thinking that as long as there was someone protecting her, nothing would happen. But Suleun knew very well that if the master wanted to, she had countless ways to kill them. Qingqing, that teacher's wife didn't mean any harm, it was just because we accidentally found out some things about her that she didn't want others to know. It is a bit far-fetched to say this. Suleun added, even if that master wants to harm us, Sister Leun can protect you. Do you believe me? Sister Leun saved me, Qingqing believes in you. Lin Qingqing thought for a while and nodded heavily. Suleun held out his little finger, then let's pull the hook. This matter is a secret between the two of us. No one can tell it. If it is told, it will be a puppy. Lin Qingqing also extended her little finger and agreed to the matter. As we walked outside, there were more and more people. Mrs. Lin often brought Lin Qingqing to Lanjiao Temple, so some nuns who knew Lin Qingqing recognized her. After a while, Shangshu and Mrs. Lin arrived with people. Qingqing. As soon as Mrs. Lin saw Lin Qingqing, she immediately rushed forward and hugged her. He quickly looked up and down to make sure she was safe. Miss Quilau and Liang Xin walked to Suleun and finally felt relieved when they saw that Suleun was fine. After leaving Lanjiao Temple, Mrs. Lin was anxious to bring Lin Qingqing back. She could only say to Suleun, Leun, I will definitely go to the Sun family to thank you for your help later, but today. Mrs. Lin, please take Qingqing back first, it'll be fine. Suleun shook his head and smiled. Mrs. Lin didn't say much and took Lin Qingqing into the carriage. Miss, let's go back first. Suleun nodded slightly. Lian Xian was about to help her get into the carriage when she heard a voice from behind. Miss Su. A little nun came out of Lanjiao nunnery and walked quickly to Suleun. She looked over and asked, where is Miss Lin? She has gone back. What's the matter with this teacher's wife? Someone asked me to give this to you. The little nun handed over a brocade bag. Suleun touched his waist and realized that the brocade bag had been left behind at some point. Suleun took the tip bag and said, thank you so much, master. She put the brocade bag away, but her heart beat wildly. This kit must have been accidentally left on the rockery. I wonder if master has ever seen the contents of this kit. Master, will she recognize it? Suleun learned everything from Master Wang Chen, and the pills in this kit also came from Master Wang Chen. If you were master, you might be able to see it. Suleun pursed his lips, turned around and got into the carriage. Miss, when we found the basement, you were already gone. How did you get out? How did you find the basement? Suleun asked. Quilau didn't notice the uneasiness in Suleun's tone, and replied, Miss, you haven't come out since you entered the temple. The slaves were really worried, so they rushed in, only to find that there was no one in the temple at all, and that a chest of silver is also missing. Are there any traces of kidnappers around? Not at all. Kuliao shook his head. Master Lin has already deployed manpower around, and Sun Wen also ordered his soldiers to be around, but nothing was found. Sulayun frowned. The kidnapper's skills were really impressive, especially since the medicine that put her into a coma was colorless and odorless, and she couldn't notice it at all. And after that, the slaves searched the temple and the surrounding area. It was Sun Wen who discovered the mechanism inside the temple and opened the basement. In other words, I was under that temple. Sulayun was startled. She originally thought that the other party knocked her out to take her away, but it turned out that she and Ching Ching were still in the temple. She became more and more confused. What did the kidnapper want to do? It's just that it's too late today. I'm afraid I'll have to ask Ching Ching tomorrow. Back at Sun Mansion, Sun Gro and Qin Zian were waiting in the front hall. Mother, second aunt. Sulayun stepped forward and said, I've made you worry. You kid, don't be so reckless in the future. Qin Zian shook his head helplessly. Sun Gro, however, had a cold face and suddenly said, kneel down. Rower, what are you? Qin Zian was stunned and wanted to persuade her, but stopped. Sulayun met Sun Gro's distressed and angry eyes and slowly knelt down. Do you know you are wrong? Mom, Yuner knows I'm wrong. What's wrong? Sun Gro took a deep breath and saw Sulayun kneeling down. It was not easy for her as a mother, but what happened today was a warning to her. In the past, she didn't care about some of Sulayun's outrageous behaviors, but that didn't mean that she allowed her children to risk their lives. Yuner shouldn't put herself in danger and make her mother worry. You are wrong. Sun Gro wiped away the tears from her eyes. You were wrong because you should not have put yourself in danger. Yuner, mother has only one request for you, no matter what time, you must protect yourself. Even if mother is, it's the same now that he's gone. Mom, don't talk nonsense. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 247. Chapter 247. The desire to die. Mom can't always stay with you, Yuner. You have to get married anyway. If you continue like this, how can you rest assured? Sun Gro stepped forward and helped Sulayun up, then took her to the edge to sit down. Sulayun felt sour in her heart. Mom, that Yuner won't get married. You child, don't say such nonsense, otherwise when you meet the person you like, won't you marry? Sun Gro smiled and shook her head, still taking Sulayun's words as a joke. How can a woman not get married? Just thinking of this, the smile on Sun Gro's face faded. Her reconciliation with Su Changqing was a weighed choice. But in the end, it will still have an impact on Ye and Yuner. They were supposed to be the legitimate sons and daughters of the Ho family, but now they are gone. Occasionally at night, Sun Gro would think, should she really choose to divorce? Or, if you turn a blind eye, your life will pass. But she could never get over the hurdle in her heart. Mom, Yuner will always be by your side. In her last life, Sulayun's biggest regret was not being able to spend the rest of her life with Sun Gro. In this life, she would never let such a regret happen again. I will always stay with my aunt. Sun Yuxuan was so angry that he kicked his calves and ran in. His words made the somewhat sad atmosphere around him suddenly brighter. Qin Zian was funny and angry. She picked up Yuxuan's son and said, you are good at interjecting. My aunt has sister Yuner with her, so why does she need you? Wouldn't it be more lively if there is one more person to accompany us? Sun Yuxuan hugged Qin Zian's shoulders and rolled his eyes. Mom, don't worry, Xiaoxian will remember to accompany you if he stays with his aunt. As he spoke, he patted Qin Zian on the shoulder, as if he were a little grown up. Everyone present laughed. After dinner, Sulayun lay in the barrel and took a bath. In the hot air, she couldn't help but think of Wang Chen again. In her eyes, Wang Chen is not like an ordinary nun, and has an indescribable temperament. Today, Sulayun learned about the place under the rockery again, and Sulayun was filled with doubts. What's in that sarcophagus? Why is Master so nervous? After a while, Sulayun fell asleep while thinking about it. In her dream, she remembered the first time she met Wang Chen. She was sent to Lanjiao nunnery by the Li family, which was called self-examination, but was actually under house arrest. She has thought about it more than once. If she had not asked for this marriage in the first place, what would happen next? By that pool of water, she had the desire to die. If you are not even afraid of death, are you still afraid of living? At the moment she crossed the railing and was about to dive into the water, a cold voice came from behind her. She turned around and looked into a pair of calm eyes. The indescribable feeling made the death wish in her heart dissipate. Master Wang Chen took her to taste tea and arrange flowers. Master Wang Chen taught her one by one what she had not learned in the Suhao mansion. Later, Master Wang Chen discovered her keen sense of smell, and she began to learn to identify medicinal materials. After that, he learned medical skills. It was just that the days were too short, and before she could learn much, she was killed by Su Weiner. Miss Sulayun woke up in a daze, hearing Lian Xian's call in his ears. Why are you asleep? The water is cold. Get up quickly. Sulayun murmured and let Lian Xian wipe himself clean and put on his clothes. As the weather gets warmer, less carbon is burned in the house. Miss, you are tired today, please go to bed early. Lian Xian helped Sulayun onto the bed, twisted the quilt for her, and spoke softly. Sulayun was still a little dizzy, so he responded softly and fell asleep after a while. While I was only half asleep, I heard a lot of sounds. Miss has a fever. Don't worry, ma'am, the young lady is feeling cold and frightened, which is why she has a fever. Once she drinks the medicine and dissipates the heat, she'll be fine. The sound of birdsong rang in my ears. Sulayun's eyelids moved slightly, and he could vaguely see a moving figure. Throat is dry and hot. She knew she had a fever. Lotus heart. Sulayun shouted in a hoarse voice. Lian Xian was already standing next to Sulayun. When she heard the sound, she reacted, Miss, you're awake. But do you want to drink water? Sulayun nodded with some difficulty. Soon, Lian Xian brought the teacup to Sulayun's mouth and asked her to drink it. After 3 cups of warm water, Sulayun felt much better. How long have I been sleeping? Sulayun looked out the window, with a dim color. Lian Xian lifted the quilt for her and said, You have been sleeping for almost 2 days, and it is now the Yishi hour. My wife has been taking care of you last night, and I was just persuaded by Granny Li to go back and rest. Worried you? Sulayun is still a little weak, and his voice has little strength. Madam is the one who is most worried. Please lie down for a while, and I will ask someone to send a message to Madam. Lian Xian stood up, walked out of the house quickly, and came back soon. Seeing Sulayun holding up his arms and trying to get up, Lian Xian quickly stepped forward to support him. Miss, you just woke up. Let me help you do whatever you want. It's okay, I drank some water and felt better. Sulayun leaned on the lotus heart and got up from the bed. Lian Xian quickly took a coat and put it on her. After a while, Sun Gro came. Yunur. Mom, I've made you worried. You silly kid, you should be worried, Sun Gro said, touching Sulayun's forehead with her hand to confirm that the temperature had dropped. The fever has gone away, but is there any discomfort left? Sulayun felt it and shook his head. No, I'm just still a little weak. It should be fine if I rest for a while. Sun Gro looked at Sulayun, who was still a little pale, and felt heartbroken. Yesterday, Mrs. Lin brought a gift to my door. When you fell asleep, my mother put it away for you. How is Ching Ching? Sulayun thought that she had a fever like this, and wondered what happened to Lin Ching Ching. Sun Gro also knew what she meant. Don't worry, that girl Ching Ching is in better shape than you. She also said she wanted to see you, but I was afraid that she would be sick after she got sick, so I didn't ask Mrs. Lin to bring her here. Then wait until I get better and then go see her. Sulayun smiled and felt relieved knowing that Lin Ching Ching was fine. Just because of this illness, I stayed in bed for several days. By the time he was completely recovered, another 3 days had passed. Chunwei also entered the last exam. Lin Mansion. Sulayun came to visit with Kuliu and Liangzin. Liyun is here, are you feeling well? Mrs. Lin immediately became concerned as soon as she saw Sulayun. Sulayun saluted, I miss Mrs. Lin, everything is fine now. That's good, it's because of Ching Ching that you caught the cold. Mrs. Lin sighed and was about to say something when Lin Ching Ching had already followed Ping Er. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 248. Chapter 248 There is a flower. As soon as she saw Sulayun, Lin Ching Ching shouted, Sister Layun. She quickly ran to Sulayun, staring at Sulayun closely. What's wrong, but there's something on my face. Sulayun also reached out and touched it. Lin Ching Ching shook her head and said, Sister Layun's face is rosy. It seems that she has recovered from her illness. Do you still know this? Of course, when Ching Ching was sick in the past, her face was pale, but when she recovered, her face turned rosy. Lin Ching Ching smiled, not feeling the gloom after being kidnapped at all. Perhaps seeing that Sulayun had something to say, Mrs. Lin asked Ping Er to take Lin Ching Ching and leave first. Layun, is there any difficulty? Mrs. Lin, I wonder if Ching Ching has told anything about the kidnappers. Seeing Lin Ching Ching leave, Sulayun asked. Mrs. Lin thought for a moment, shook her head and said, I have been with Ching Ching these past few days, but I haven't heard her say anything. It's just that the kidnappers were also cunning and didn't leave any traces. Really, Sulayun said thoughtfully, Mrs. Lin, can you allow me to ask Ching Ching? Mrs. Lin was naturally hesitant, worried about whether Ching Ching would be affected by talking about this matter. So, she asked, do you want to ask Ching Ching about the kidnapper? Sulayun pursed his lower lip and looked a little solemn. Mrs. Lin, there is one thing I didn't tell you. On the day Ching Ching disappeared, I might have seen the kidnapper. What? Mrs. Lin was surprised and couldn't believe it. That day, the kidnapper passed me by, and I asked about the smell of the sachet on King King's body, but I didn't immediately think of it at the time, so Ching Ching suffered in vain. Sulayun had a look of guilt on his face. If she had thought of it, she would have saved Ching Ching at that time. Fortunately nothing happened to Ching Ching, otherwise she would really feel guilty for the rest of her life. Mrs. Lin took her hand and said softly, I don't blame you for this. It's just that you said you saw the kidnapper. Is there anything strange about it? At that time, I just glanced at him. I was not sure yet, so I asked someone to follow him, but I still lost him. But what is certain is that that person is not from the Central Plains. Alien. Mrs. Lin was stunned. She didn't expect that there was such a connection. Sulayun said, I just don't know what clan he is from, so I want to see if I can find out anything from Ching Ching. If they were really from a foreign race, this matter would be a bit of a big deal. Mrs. Lin only hesitated for a moment before agreeing. He was led to Lin King's house by the maid. Ping Er was playing with Lin Ching Ching in the yard. Seeing Sulayun coming, Ping Er quickly stopped and said, Miss Su. Sister Layun. Lin Qingqing ran to Sulayun and looked at Sulayun with wide eyes. Qingqing, and I have something to say. We have already discussed this matter with Mrs. Lin. That slave retreated first. Ping also moved the surrounding maids away. Sulayun led Lin Qingqing into the house. Sister Layun, Qingqing didn't tell the secret. Thinking that this was what Sulayun wanted to ask, Lin Qingqing hurried over. Sulayun rubbed the top of her hair. I know Qingqing will definitely keep it a secret, but that's not what Sister Layun wants to ask about. Then sister, what do you want to ask? Lin Qingqing sat on the stool obediently and wanted to bring tea and water to Sulayun, but Sulayun stopped her. Qingqing, maybe the questions Sister Layun wants to ask will make you unhappy and remind you of sad things. If you feel uncomfortable, Sister Layun won't ask. Okay. Sulayun knelt down and looked at Lin Qingqing, hoping to make her feel more relaxed. There is a faint fragrance floating around, which makes people feel relaxed and happy. It should be that Mrs. Lin specially asked someone to prepare it for Lin Qingqing. Lin Qingqing's eyes widened. What is sister asking? If Qingqing can answer, she will tell her. Sister Layun doesn't have to ask Qingqing to answer. Everything must be based on Qingqing's mood. Okay. Well, Qingqing knows if she doesn't want to answer, Qingqing will tell her sister. Lin Qingqing nodded heavily, then looked at Sulayun. Sulayun thought for a while and asked, Qingqing still remembers what you were doing when you were taken away? When Lin Qingqing asked this question, her eyes flashed, a little scared. Obviously, although she has not spoken out these days, she is still thinking about this matter in her heart. Lin Qingqing bit her lower lip and said after a while, my mother took me out to play that day, but Qingqing just wanted to have fun, so she asked Sister Ping to take Qingqing to the stall. Qingqing was attracted by the candy man and wanted to get closer. While watching, this one was hit and then fainted. As she spoke, Lin Qingqing pointed at the back of her neck. Then what did you see when you woke up? See. Lin Qingqing pouted and frowned, thinking about something. I saw several girls about my age lying around. When I wanted to talk to them, someone outside told us not to make any noise. Several girls. Sulayun thought about it. Could this be a human trafficker? But why would foreigners do such a thing? Then have you talked to those little girls? I secretly told Xiaoun next to me. She said she was sleeping at home, but who knew she would be here when she woke up? Lin Qingqing seemed to have remembered something and said, Sister Layun, what will happen to those girls? Will anyone save them? Sulayun was stunned for a moment, then smiled helplessly, but didn't know how to explain it. Will anyone save those little girls? The answer seems to be easy to say. But facing Lin Qingqing's sincere gaze, Sulayun hesitated and said, maybe they have been rescued. After hearing this, Lin Qingqing smiled and said, that's good. Qingqing, have you seen what those people look like? As soon as this question came out of her mouth, Lin Qingqing's face changed drastically and her body began to tremble. Sulayun quickly took Lin Qingqing into his arms. Don't be afraid Qingqing, sister is here. Sister Layun, it's so scary, that person is covered in blood. It's okay, it's okay. You are at home now. It's over. No one will hurt Qingqing again. It took a while for Lin Qingqing to calm down. Looking at Lin Qingqing with tears on her cheeks, Sulayun sighed softly and wiped away her tears. Lin Qingqing lowered her eyes and suddenly said, Sister, Qingqing saw that there was a flower on that person's arm. What kind of flower? It's very red, just like the color of blood on his body. It has many slender petals that turn outwards. Qingqing has never seen this kind of flower. Did Qingqing not help? Lin Qingqing looked at Sulayun with some annoyance. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns. The real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 249. Chapter 249. Congratulations in advance. Sulayun patted Lin Qiqing's back gently and said in a soft voice, "Ching Ching, you have done a good job, but I think I have never seen the sister Hua you mentioned. I wonder if you would like to look for it with your sister." "Okay." Children are always curious about this kind of searching for things. Lin Qingqing is no exception. Fortunately, Mrs. Lin also often grows flowers, and there are several books recording flowers in her house. Ping took them all over. 6 books, recording nearly 1,000 species of flowers. It does take some time to look through them. Lin Qingqing drew the pattern on the paper according to her own memory, and with the help of Lian Xin and others, the speed was much faster. About half an hour later, everyone selected flowers that they thought were similar and asked Lin Qingqing to choose. "I just looked through a dozen of them, but I still can't find that kind of flower. This." Suddenly, Lin Qingqing's eyes stopped on a piece of paper. She looked at it for a while, seeming hesitant. Sulayun turned his head to look, and it looked very similar to what Lin Qingqing had drawn. "Sister Leun, it seems to be this kind of flower." Lin Qingqing looked at it repeatedly to confirm. "There is not much introduction about this flower. I only know that the flower name is Manzushawa, which is not common in the Central Plains." At least he had a name, so Sulayun made a special trip to Yulo again and asked Elder Wuxin to investigate. "Carve Manzushawa on your arm," Elder Wuxin thought thoughtfully, seeming to have thought of something. "I seem to have seen such a foreigner before, but it was a little far apart in time, and I couldn't remember it for a while. Please also ask Miss Su has been waiting for several days." "It's troublesome, Elder." Sulayun nodded lightly and left without staying long, taking Lian Xin and Kuliu with him. "Miss, do you want to go back to Sun Mansion?" Seeing Sulayun stop at the fork in the road, Lian Xin stepped forward and asked. Sulayun thought for a while. "This place is not far from Dali Temple. You can accompany me there." Kuliu and Liang Xin were a little confused. They looked at each other and said, "Yes, miss." When the 3 of them arrived in front of Dali Temple, they saw Wang Xiuyi coming out of Dali Temple. "Master Wang." Sulayun stepped forward to welcome him. When Wang Xiuyi saw Sulayun, he was startled for a moment, and then said, "Miss Su is here because of Wen Yao's affairs. Sir Wang is really smart. I wonder if we can arrange for a civilian girl to meet Wen Yao." "According to the rules, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that Miss Su's relationship with Wen Yao is a bit unusual, so I'm afraid they can't meet alone. The implication is that someone needs to be watching from the side." Sulayun didn't care. "Then I'll trouble Mr. Wang to make arrangements." "Ms. Su, you're welcome." It was arranged quickly. Wang Xiuyi had something urgent at hand, so he asked Hongyang to take Sulayun to see Wen Yao. "Ms. Su, I don't like what I say. I just want to remind you that you should not do anything unnecessary for a while, otherwise you will get into trouble." Hongyang thought that Sulayun wanted to teach Wen Yao a lesson and speak out for his mother, so he kindly gave a reminder. He had heard that Sulayun was raised in Jingzhou since she was a child and was brought back a few years ago. However, looking at her now, she really couldn't tell that she was a girl raised in the countryside. She is more well-mannered than many ladies in Beijing. I just don't know if it's the gold and jade on the outside that are corrupted on the inside. Hongyang's attitude towards Sulayun was respectful, but more or less appreciative. Sulayun was not annoyed. She had been criticized many times in her previous life, and Hongyang was still doing well. "Master Hong, don't worry, Li Yun has his own sense of proportion." "That's good." After saying that, the group of people also arrived outside the prison. Hongyang stopped, looked at Lian Xin and Kui Lu, and then said to Sulayun, "Miss Su's 2 maids, I'm afraid they have to wait outside." "Good." Sulayun nodded. Liangzin and Kualai were waiting outside the prison. Sulayun followed Hongyang into prison. The surroundings were a little dark, and the salty and damp smell in his nose was particularly obvious to Sulayun. She raised her hand without trace and wiped it on the tip of her nose. The fragrance diluted the unpleasant smell. Hongyang stopped after walking a certain distance inside. At this time, Sulayun also saw Wenyayo and Suyuking in prison. Wenyayo, someone wants to see you. Master Ho. Wenyao's first reaction was that Su Changqing came to see her, but when she raised her head and met Sulayun's eyes that seemed to be smiling but not smiling, her voice suddenly dropped, and her face became even uglier than before. What are you doing here? Suyuking suddenly stood up and walked quickly to the wooden railing. She stared at Sulayun with her eyes, as if she saw an enemy. Had she not believed Sulayun's lies at that time, she would not be in jail now. Su Changzhong, who was next door, heard the sound and stepped forward while shouting, "Mom, is Dad here?" When he saw Sulayun, his eyes widened. "Sulayun, you still dare to come?" Hongyang took a few steps back, but he was muttering in his heart. How can these three people be so confident when facing Sulayun? I don't feel any guilt at all. But thinking about it, just considering Wenyao's choice of being a foreign wife, I'm afraid the two children she raised will not be very good either. Why don't I dare to come? Sulayun was not annoyed, with a smile on his lips. After all, it's not me who is in jail now. You. Suyuking could only point at Sulayun and was speechless for a while. Wenyao sat by the wall, calmer than Suyuking. What do you want to do here? It's not a big deal, I just wanted to congratulate you in advance. Sulayun's eyes turned cold. She had already learned that Wenyao's identity was doubtful, but she was really curious. Besides Su Changqing, who else was behind Wenyao? You can actually hide it from the sky to this extent. I don't know what to congratulate. Wenyao glanced at Sulayun and asked. Congratulations on having the opportunity to become the Marquis's wife. Sulayun smiled, hiding the suspicion in his eyes. Wenyao was startled. Although she knew about Sun Jiaro's letter of departure, she also understood that Su Changqing would not give up on the Sun family so quickly. Why did Sulayun want to congratulate her now? Heli Shu, Suho has signed it? Sulayun's words confirmed Wenyao's guess, but she couldn't help laughing. Mrs. Haofu? Under such circumstances, how could Mrs. Su allow her to come in? She didn't know Su Changqing's current situation, but if he was okay, he would definitely come to see her, but now there was no trace of him, so she thought something had happened. What does it mean for her to be the wife of a prince who has a problem? Sulayun glanced at Wenyao's swollen belly, but she still had doubts in her heart. Wenyao was indeed not pregnant in her previous life, and she really felt that this child was a bit weird. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 250. Chapter 250 Asking for a request. Suyuking and Su Changzhong did not have the same thoughts as Wenyao. When they heard Sulayun's words, smiles appeared on their faces. They have been waiting for so many years, and finally the time has come. Suyuking bit her lower lip and asked quickly, your mother won't regret it, right? Sulayun couldn't help but sneered, but didn't answer. Wenyao, is the child in your belly my father's seed? Is that so? Mr. Ho knows it in his heart, I don't need to explain it to you. Wenyao's eyes flashed and she lowered her eyes. Seeing her reaction in his eyes, Sulayun had some thoughts in his mind. Mr. Hong, let's go. Ms. Su, please. After listening to this conversation, Hongyang's view of Sulayun changed. This Miss Su is extraordinarily calm. There is a sharp contrast with Suyuking in this prison. Sulayun followed Hongyang out of the prison. Mr. Hong, I'm sorry to trouble you today. I'll take my leave first. Then I won't give it away. Hongyang raised his hand and asked the guards on the side to take Suleun and the others out. Back to the Sun Mansion, I met Qin Zian, who had returned from the Wen family. Second aunt, are you coming back from Aunt Qian Shuang? Suleun subconsciously glanced at Qin Zian's expression, but couldn't tell anything. Qin Zian nodded. Qian Shuang's face looks good recently, so there should be nothing wrong with her. Having said that, I still need to ask Aunt Qian Shuang to pay more attention to that peach core. I'm worried that the other party may have other tricks. Suleun thought of the last situation. In that situation, although Tao Rui was a little panicked, she calmed down quickly. It was obviously not because of her abnormal mind. But Aunt Qian Shuang was devoted to Wen Rugui, which made it easy for Tao Rui to take advantage of her. I also told Qian Shuang about this, but she couldn't listen. I could only ask Chen Shui and Qiu Tong to pay more attention. Qin Zian shook his head helplessly. Perhaps it was because she was born without a mother. Even though she always took care of her, Qian Shuang still lacked love. Thinking about it, this was the reason why she was so devoted to Wen Rugui. This can only be done slowly. Suleun felt something in his heart. She was never like this in her previous life. Early the next morning, Suleun and Sun Gro went to Lanjiao Temple together. In order to prevent others from knowing where the secret passage leads, Suleun and Lin Qingqing said to the outside world that they were rescued by the nuns of Lanjiao Temple. Perhaps Master Wang Chen had already said it, so the nuns at Lanjiao Temple also acquiesced in this matter. Suleun originally wanted to see Wang Chen again, so Sun Gro thought about going there together and thanking him properly. When we arrived at Lanjiao Temple, there was already a nun waiting outside the temple. She ushered a few people into the nunnery. The surroundings were filled with incense, but it was very quiet. It is very different from Tianbao Temple. Donor Su, the person you want to see is already waiting for you in the wing. This nun did not leave, but said something to Suleun. Suleun was startled. Master, did she know that she would come? In other words, Master recognized those medicines. Sun Gro was a little confused. Yunur, who are you here to see? Mom, this is the master who saved her daughter last time. Wait for me here while I go over. Hearing this, Sun Jiaja said, since he is Yunur's lifesaver, I naturally have to go over and thank him. Donor son, senior sister only saw little benefactor Su. She said. Seeing this, although Sun Gro was surprised, she did not force it. Suleun followed the nun and walked to the side room. I don't know what to call this master. Whipping. Whipping nodded and returned. Suleun thought about it. She seemed to have heard of Whipping in her previous life, but she had never seen him in person. It's only now that I got the number. You are the junior sister of Master Wang Chen. Whipping turned her head slightly and glanced at Suleun, as if she was thinking about the word master she just accidentally said. After a while, Hui Ping said, senior sister Wang Chen rarely walks out, and even I, a junior sister, rarely see her. This sentence seems to answer something, but it also seems to answer nothing. After finishing speaking, Whipping did not speak again. Until he brought Suleun to the side room, he walked up and knocked on the door. Senior sister, little donor Su is here. For a moment, let her in. Whipping looked at Suleun and signaled, little donor Su, please come in. She opened the door, waited for Suleun to enter the room, and then closed the door. The side room was a little dark, and when Suleun was looking around, Wang Chen pushed open a window. Miss Su came to see me, what did she want to ask? Wang Chen stood by the window and looked out. The profile of his face was clear-cut, and in the sunlight, his eyes seemed to be shining with a blue light. Suleun couldn't help but close his eyes. When he opened them again, the faint blue light was gone. She must have seen it wrong. When he saw his master again, Suleun didn't know what to say. She pursed her lower lip, took off the brocade bag from her waist, and slowly placed it on the table. You seem to know that I will come to you. Facing Wang Chen, Sulayun unconsciously became respectful. A teacher once is a teacher for a lifetime. Although Master Wang Chen never asked her to call her master in her previous life until her death, in Sulayun's heart, Wang Chen was her master regardless of the past life or this life. Wang Chen retracted his gaze, walked slowly from the window to the table, picked up the brocade bag, and then took out a few pills inside and placed them on the table one by one. Where did you get these? Sulayun stared at the pills for a moment, then raised his head to meet Wang Chen's gaze and said, if I say that I learned it from you, would you believe it? Wang Chen's eyes flashed. She naturally didn't believe this statement. She has never met Sulayun, how could she possibly teach Sulayun these things? Just Sulayun's words also made her a little stunned. Having said this, Sulayun obviously knew that she would do this, but how did he know? Wang Chen had a lot of confusion in her heart. The moment she met Sulayun's eyes, an unspeakable feeling spread in her heart. Those eyes were full of respect and gratitude. Can't make a lie. Wang Chen turned his face away and said, Donor Su, no matter what you know, I hope your mouth is tight enough and you won't say it out. You don't want me to tell you, so I'll have the guts to ask you for a request, okay? Sulayun said it almost by mistake. What? Wang Chen frowned slightly. She thought Sulayun was a sensible person, but unexpectedly she looked away. Sulayun took a deep breath, as if he had hidden a lot of courage, stared at Wang Chen, and said word by word, I would like to ask you to accept me as your disciple. Are you willing to give up all the glory and wealth? Wang Chen chuckled lightly, with teasing hidden in his words. You know what I mean. I can't explain all this to you now, but I can guarantee that everything I know was taught to me by you, whether it's these medicines or acupuncture. Sulayun slowly raised his hand, holding a silver needle between his fingers. End of this chapter.